Welcome back, everyone, to the Burn Boot Camp podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Morgan Kline, and today I am joined with Amber Burke, our COO of Burn Boot Camp. And so today we are going to talk about women in charge and just what it's like to be a powerful woman in business. So a little bit about Amber. Amber, welcome, by the way.
Thank you.
A little bit about Amber. So she has over 2 decades of fitness industry experience. She holds a bachelor's degree in exercise science and a master's degree in sports management. She's a wife, a mom of 2, and recently promoted to Chief Operating Officer here at Burn Boot Camp. So she is leading an incredibly large team here at Burn Boot Camp. She's grown very quickly in our organization, but she has a ton of background. And so Amber really empowers people, not just through fitness, but also through leadership. And so please welcome to the podcast, Amber Burke.
Thank you.
All right. So I shared a little bit there about your background, but talk to me a little bit specifically about your career path to get you where you're at today.
Awesome. So you mentioned my degrees, exercise science, sports management. I definitely knew that that's what I wanted to do in some format or another. I was a collegiate athlete and always into sports, grew up as a gymnast and a dancer. And so just knew that that was some element of my life.
Yep.
And initially started as a strength and conditioning coach. So certified strength and conditioning coach through the NSCA, USAW level 1 weightlifting, CS CrossFit level 1, like whatever it was, all the things.
If it's out there, Amber has it.
Yeah, I was never one of those people that was like, oh, I only do lifting or only do HIIT. Like I just whatever
You've just loved fitness,
group
moving
fitness.
your body.
Yeah, I'll teach group fit. I don't care. I'll teach anything. So that's where my passion really began as an athlete and achievement and results driven. And so once I graduated from college, I went to work for an organization called Velocity Sports Performance, which is also a franchise. And we worked with athletes ages 8 to 18, and it was speed, power, and agility. And so I got to get up and go to a gym every day and work with athletes.
Yeah.
This was in the DC area, so I got to work with some of the Redskins, which was very cool.
Yeah.
And so it was just really cool because I saw myself in them. I was, fresh out of graduate school, and it just filled my cup for a long time. But I'm a mover and a shaker, and I have a love of learning. I was a graduate assistant when I got my master's degree, so I taught 5 classes while I was also getting my degree. Wow. I love that element of just teaching.
Yeah. So
as a strength and conditioning coach, about a year and a half in, I wanted to work at the front desk, and I wanted to know what the sales process was, and I wanted to just, how do you run this business? My parents both owned businesses when I was growing up, so there's that entrepreneurial spirit is there. So I just started acquiring whatever roles they would give me. I would take them and I would do them. And so that led me to Charlotte. I was with Velocity Corporate in 2007. And in 2008, the economy kind of crashed. And Velocity I believe we had 12 corporate-owned locations, and I managed the one here in Charlotte. And mine was the last store that they sold, and I was on maternity leave, which was a huge blessing because I didn't want to go back.
Yeah.
I don't think I had admitted that to myself, but I didn't want to go back. I hadn't looked for daycare or anything like that. And so I spent some time off with my daughter, and then was like, okay, I gotta go back. So I went back into personal training in a big box gym, which was a completely different thing.
Yep.
I lovingly call them the general population, because when you go from athletes to normal people, it's a little different. I was not successful, to be honest, at first. I wanted their goals more than they wanted their goals. And that was...
Right. It's a new way to motivate.
Yeah.
You have to find a new way to motivate.
I wasn't speaking their language. I was speaking my language and trying to, make them understand me, and it was challenging. So that was a big growth opportunity for me. But I ended up staying with that organization for 11 years and went from trainer to master trainer to regional trainer to sales, pro shop, retail, facilities, group fitness, whatever. Yep. I will take it if you're willing to give it to me.
Yep.
And ultimately left after 11 years to come here. But I had already been a member for 3 years before I came here. So
I'm like a trial hopper, right? Like, I think I know you probably don't want to admit that. And
no, I think it's a funny story, actually.
I love our trial hoppers because some of them have turned into franchise partners, now a COO. Like, sometimes you don't know what you want until you've done it long enough.
I think what was so cool about that, though, is it kept, every time I showed up, it didn't matter. I went to West Raleigh. I was here. every time it was the same community, and like they didn't care.
Yeah.
They just were glad that I was there. And I thought, you know what? I have a degree. I'm certified. I know how to do all of this.
Yeah.
But if I can just wake up, come here, Matt can kick my rear.
Yep. Don't think about it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or Megan Lafferty in West Raleigh kicked my butt when I went there.
Yep.
Then that was it. That was all I had to do. And I just thought it really resonated with me.
Yeah.
And I was just grateful that they just let me keep coming back.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I remember interviewing her and she's like, you know, to be honest, nobody ever asked me for the sale. So I was like, okay, now I really need to hire you because we need a sales culture here, which you've helped develop. But I think you and I have a lot in common when we talk about just our background and our willingness to do things that we've never really done, or just our willingness to learn. You know, I think about not just my career at Burn Boot Camp, but even like with Kellogg's. And I've always held a job since I was, I mean, even like 8 and 9, my mom had me working at her salon folding towels. But I've always held a job. That's just been part of me. And I've worn a lot of hats, right? And I've never said like, oh, that's not my thing. I didn't go to school for that, or I don't need to do that anymore. And I see that in you, and you can obviously hear it. It's like always hungry to learn more. And so I know some of this conversation is going to be for maybe someone that is looking to grow in their career and what the best advice would be. But, you know, when you think about being in the personal fitness industry, right, it can often be male dominated. It's not necessarily here in boutique fitness, but did you ever face any challenges being a female and really trying to build your career? Whether that was when, you know, you decided to have a family, or just maybe before that, you know, not stacking up to your male counterparts.
Yeah, I've had this question before, just in conversation and in different environments, and I've tried to think about, did I ever really feel like I had challenges? I'm pretty sure that I did. But when I think back on it, I think I was so just driven that I felt like I didn't want to make that an excuse. And not to say that others haven't had like real obstacles.
Barriers,
I am not at all downplaying that. But I think for me, I was very, very lucky to be in kind of the right place at the right time with the right people, who, men or women, would foster kind of my drive and my desire, challenge me appropriately and contextually. But I always just looked at adversity as adversity, that it was my responsibility to overcome it if I wanted something out of it. Nobody was ever going to give it to me. Yeah. And I think that came back from just being an athlete. Like when you earn that starting position, it's on you to keep it, because somebody else is always going to be coming after you to get it. Absolutely. And so I think that's always kind of how I looked at it. Yeah.
I think too, though, like some of the qualities that I love about you is like, you're just very straightforward and honest, and like you don't take shit. Like, and
can we say words like that?
Yeah. Sorry if I'm not allowed to say that, but, you know, cause I think about a little bit too, if I were asked that question, I think I am so different because I am the owner of the company. So there's not, from like a career path standpoint, there's not much that can get in my way because I'm creating my own destiny in a way. However, I think I experience it a little bit more now than I did in the beginning, of just when I am when I am in a room with like other CEOs that are men, the first 20 to 30 minutes, I feel like they just want to like brag about themselves. And I just want to get to the point. Like, can we just talk business, you know? And there's been times where, you know, I've been asked like, well, this is Devin's dream. And like, you're just, you know, you're just along for the ride. And the side chick, I'm the baby mama, I'm the sugar mama, you know, which he does call me. So maybe he needs to stop doing that. But, you know, I do think obviously we all face challenges though, like men and women. Like Devin and I think because we were young too, we had some challenges to grow because people didn't take us seriously. So whether that's male, female, young, old, maybe you don't feel qualified, whatever, like you said, I think it's, what are you willing to like step into a room, and you have to own that like command and like that confidence that I'm here to stay. Yeah.
I mean, there were definitely times of maybe fear or uncertainty. Yeah. You know, throughout that, it wasn't always like, everything's going to work out all the time. But I don't think I ever felt like it was so egregious that it would hold me backwards, that it was limiting in some way. And I feel like probably pretty lucky that I experienced that.
Yeah. And I think now we have the opportunity to change that, right, in what we're doing here at Burn, and just how, we have a lot of younger women working for us, or that look to you to be mentored, and I think it's about the environment now that we can experience some of that stuff. And then once you know better, you got to do better.
Yeah.
And make sure it's not a barrier for when you're in control like that.
Yeah.
So what leadership qualities do you believe that have been crucial to your success?
Yeah. Listening and understanding. And even the example that I gave when I was a trainer, I was leading my clients. And at first I thought that I knew what to do. I've been doing this for a while, jump right in and do the things. And it took having some failures and some feedback from my clients to say, you're not listening. And so that really resonated with me, because if I had coaches that didn't listen to me as an athlete or a player, I couldn't perform for them appropriately. And so actively listening and really truly understanding how to communicate with people in the language that they speak. I think that's something else where we use Culture Index here at Burn, other people at Myers-Briggs. There's different ways to understand people. But even without those tests, I think it's important to read body language and how do people respond, and are you an energy vampire to someone, or do you give life to someone, and the way that you show up. And I take that very personally, and I think it's my responsibility as a leader to make the environment conducive for that person to speak up, to succeed, to grow, to fail. I mean, I tell my kids all the time, you never win until you fail.
And that's what I can thank sports for that too. Learning that failure at a young age, because it's still going to happen. Later in life.
And I think making failure okay, and just being willing really to allow to speak the language, even if it's not my first language. I'm not a touchy-feely person. I'm not a super emotional person, but sometimes I have to show up like that if I'm going to get something out of the person that I'm leading. And so that's on me to do.
I think too, you've helped us bring that into our sales culture. When you think about listening, right? It's always about assessing what their needs are. When somebody walks into the door, it's for a reason, right? So whether you're, selling a product or selling a service, don't talk so much about what's great about it. Listening first, and then meeting the needs of what that person needs with your product or service,
and it
or
changes.
leadership.
It changes. I mean, I've had being at one organization for 11 years with a lot of the same people, your needs change over time. And it's the same with our members. I've had 23 years in the fitness industry. My goals are way different today than they were 20 years ago. Real different.
Absolutely.
So.
You're like, I just need to take care of my knee now.
We're in maintenance mode at this point.
So obviously you don't get here, on accident. You need to seek out mentors and role models, and again, be hungry to learn. So how do you seek personal development, or do you have you had mentors in the past, and what's been something that stands out to you that's helped you?
Yeah, thankfully I've had several mentors in my lifetime, and at kind of each segment. So when I was with Velocity, one of our franchise partners, when I was in the Philadelphia area, we had multi-unit, and we had a couple of different franchise partners. And so he just kind of took me under his wing. And it was really cool to have him walk me through some of the other elements of the business that, I was hired as a general manager, revenue, run the business, keep it going. But he really took the time to kind of teach me business practices and talk to me about P&L and let me know what EBITDA means and things like that. And so we would do breakfasts together, and it just the time, right, made me feel important, which then if I have value, if I feel that you think that my time is valuable, I'm willing to give more of it. And I think that's where we talk about measurable discretionary effort. I was willing to do more for nothing, for less, for just the fact that I felt valued, important too. So I've kind of had a couple of different instances with people that have shown up like that for me. Personally, I think I've really enjoyed just some of the basics, really, like good to great. John Gordon's, philosophies and things like that have always just resonated with me. I'm a pretty simple person. I don't like to make things super complicated. The more complex it is, the harder it is, and my brain just doesn't want to deal with that. So But yes, definitely mentorship and being available
Yeah.
for that. I think you have to be in a posture of acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it comes at you and you don't even realize it. And you're like, dang, that was a pretty big lesson.
Yeah.
So even just being able to stop and recognize pivotal moments that maybe change your trajectory, I think are important.
And I think you do a good job. And this is something I try to do too, of being an open door now to anyone else. Sometimes that gets us in trouble, right? But it all starts with how you're approachable, right?
Yeah.
So like if you're somebody that also wants to be a mentor, it's like, how do you come off to other people? Are you inviting? Are you welcoming? Are you willing to show 5 minutes for somebody to ask you questions and learn more?
Yeah.
And I can speak, and I think you could say the same if you're listening to this and you're maybe early on in your career. For me, the people that speak up in meetings and like ask questions and don't act like they know everything are the people that like I do want to pour into. And I think we oftentimes think we need to come to a meeting or a conversation, assume like pretending that we know everything. I just love being like, hey, I don't know what that acronym is. Like, can you tell me what that is? Like, and I think that's a superpower because again, a lot of people will come into meetings just with a different posture. And so ask questions and be humble. If you don't know it, that's okay. Go seek it and learn it.
Yeah, so. I think that's important. You know, we, a couple of years ago, I used to, when I would teach in some of the locations that I was in, I would talk about humans have a 4-second attention span, and it's equivalent to a goldfish.
Yes.
And
we're all just a bunch of goldfish.
It's here we are. And it's relative, like if you think of scroll and stop and scroll and stop and scroll and stop. And so it's like, if you're only going deep enough, if you're the headlines person, right? If you're the tagline, if you're the hook, and that's as deep as you're either willing to go or that you are going when you show up into those rooms or when you go in for a job, whether that's an interview for a new job or you're asking for a raise or something like that. I think it's important that you got to dig in. You got to do your homework and you asking the right kinds of questions and really showing that you're paying attention and you're not just scrolling through your brain of your to-do list and stuff like that. I think
it's hard to do these days because everything's right there.
Yeah.
You know, we're very, very highly stimulated. At least I know I am. And it takes intention to be all in of what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's, she believed she could, so she did. That's a quote that I have in my office, and then I have it at home, and that's just, you know, you got to believe in yourself, but you got to be willing to do the work. So believe and be willing are kind of the things that kind of keep me driven.
Yeah, the belief is 50%, and then the action is the other 50. I like that. So maybe that kind of segues to my next question here, but what advice would you give the next generation, right? If you're talking to your daughter right here, and she wants advice on, you know, hey, how do I grow my career? What would you say to her?
Yeah. Be willing and just believe. I think that you have to have an internal drive and intrinsic motivation to get to a certain place. And, you know, I think with all the technology and all the tools and the resources that we have and all the influencers, and we're inundated with experts and information. Yeah. You do not have to have it all figured out.
No.
I don't have it all figured out.
No, I don't either.
I'm just grateful to be sitting here today. This is wonderful.
Yeah.
You know, I know obviously I have goals and, you know, I've made some plans, but I think there's, you know, be agile to a degree, fluid. Be intentionally agile. You know, what are those milestones? But just be willing, be open, but be brave and believe.
Yeah. I love that. All right, so rapid fire questions. Okay, one of my favorite things to do.
Burning questions.
Yeah. So you mentioned a book, but can you share a book, podcast, or resource that's greatly influenced your professional journey?
Yeah, I have a couple of them. So I do like the way John Gordon writes. I think the little parables and the stories are fun. The Energy Bus, you could probably read it in a day.
Yeah, you definitely can.
I gave it to all of my team at my previous job, and it's just a really great way to say, hey, I want you on the team, but if you don't want to end up in where we're going, you don't have to, but that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, so
you got to get off the bus.
Yeah, you got to get off the bus, but that's okay. You know, maybe you get off at the right stop because that's the milestone. But as a leader, if you're looking for, hey, how do I just start kind of formulating my leadership perspective? It's a great little read. Jocko, I love Extreme Ownership and Dichotomy of Leadership. I actually read them backwards. I read Dichotomy of Leadership first, and then I read Extreme Ownership. Dichotomy of Leadership is a chapter of the book Extreme Ownership because I think he realized that people can take this
Go
really
go
too
deep.
far, and
Yeah.
there's a balance.
Yeah.
You have to let people fail. You
Yeah.
have to understand what people are doing. You have to know when to step in. And so I think if you're a moderate to advanced leader, definitely 2 good books to read. Podcast wise, I do like listening to Huberman. He's just, it's the science, it's the trainer aspect
Yeah.
for me, the science, and he's all over the
Yeah.
place and wicked smart.
We got to get him on our podcast.
Yes, Andrew Huberman, we're coming for you.
Come on.
But yeah, so that's more fun, but like
Yeah.
intellectually stimulating from a fitness element.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good. What is your go-to productivity hack or time management tip?
I get asked this a lot too. I really don't feel like I have one. Surviving the day. That's what I do. No,
You're good at your calendar management.
I do like to time block. I
Yeah.
do like to make sure that I'm making time to get things done. And I actually use my email as a kind of a to-do list. So I've got it organized in a way that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And so I know what's flagged. If it's unread, you know, I kind of move it around. So I do that because I don't like going in multiple places for things.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Like if I think about it, it's like, let me just shoot myself an email
Yeah.
and then it's at the top of your inbox.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. One must-do morning ritual.
coffee. Above all, coffee.
Yes.
Or, you know, whatever. And then a little bit of movement. I do like to, I'll get up in the morning and, you know, we have Burn On Demand if there's like a motion or stretching. Or I'll bike or just something, 20 minutes or so.
Yeah, get your blood pumping.
Yeah.
For sure. All right, well, Amber, thank you so much for joining us today. Guys, thank you for listening. Hopefully that gave you some really good tips on just leadership and building your career and some great tips on just going after your dreams, but also believing in yourself and doing the work.
Yes.
So thank you guys for listening. Make sure that you subscribed. If this podcast did anything for you, leave Amber and I a review. We love reviews. It helps us grow our reach and our impact. So thanks again for listening. We're going to end like we always do. 2 claps on 2. 1, 2.